me a moment with your friend. I've never been on trial for my thoughts before.
Welcome to the Only One Mic podcast called Gerard Brooklyn Dre. J-Rob is back in the building. Let's applaud that. Missed you, brother. All right, our special guest tonight is Miss Collette Watson. Now, Miss Collette Watson is a part of the Media 2070 project talking about reparations and black media. Collette, how are you?
I am doing okay.
Just okay? Just okay?
No, I'm strong in spirit though. My physical edifice is a little rusty today, but I'm strong in spirit. So.
I hear you.
That's good.
This change of the weather is getting everybody, Collette. So, you know, I understand. I'm on this microphone struggling right now. For you, the people, applaud that. All right. So we're going to jump into the whole Media 2070 project. We're going to discuss that. But first, we got to give you a little bit of background on Collette, who is actually a writer, a musician, a communication strategist. And now we can add director onto that list of things that you've done. Tell us about it.
Yes, directed my first film, a documentary called Black in the Newsroom, about the journey of a young journalist, Elizabeth Montgomery. And we were able to take that on the road to film festivals. We won Best Documentary at Detroit Black Film Festival. So shout out to the D. Then we won at Peachtree Village International. And, you know, that feels like a great honor since I am a first time director, you know, but most importantly, we got a lot of black journalists and black community members thinking about these newsrooms and how toxic they are for our folks and how that generates toxic news and information. So it's been quite a ride. All
right. And I just want to also, you know, give a big round of applause to Elizabeth Montgomery. That sister been through a lot. I wish we could have her on the show, you know, so Liz, if you're listening, if you could just get in your hands, you know what I mean? You got a platform here because
we won in.
We won in. Yeah. We won in. You know what I mean? And we got to put the thumbs down over to her former employee of the Arizona Republic for, you know, doing this young lady dirty. But go ahead and tell us about the documentary. I know it's focusing on Elizabeth's journey, which, you know, when you get a chance to see this, folks, is a journey in itself from personal to professional, the things that she's been through and then still going through. But she, you know, from the update saying that everything is looking good now. So can you please, you know, give us some background on the whole Media 2070 Black in the Newsroom project?
Absolutely. So, you know, Media 2070 is a project that launched in 2020. Mm-hmm. And what we do is we really bring awareness to a history of media anti-Blackness, going back to the very first newspapers in colonial America and how they made their money off of selling ads for enslaved ancestors, right on through to now, and the ways that these newsrooms make it basically impossible to survive as a Black journalist, and the ways that back during the time of Jim Crow and even prior to that, you would have these newspapers that would publish these false headlines accusing Black men, for instance, of different things that would result in lynchings. Or you might have things like the Tulsa massacre that might get set off by those kinds of false headlines. Just a variety of things throughout history that let us know that this media system, whether that's news, social media, these tech companies, music, entertainment companies, book publishing, all of that is connected as a media system. Just like you have a criminal justice system or a healthcare system, education, media is a system. And it has anti-Blackness in its DNA because it's been the profit model since the very beginning.
I want to ask you, because you did mention music, okay, and you being a musician yourself, you wanted to share the stage with Talib Kweli and Lauryn Hill and a lot. What was that like? You shared the stage with Lauryn Hill.
Y'all do research, right? Okay.
Name of the game. What was that like?
And we're hip hopologists too.
Yeah, Talib was really great to work with. I opened for him that one time, and then I just would keep running into him in kind of those circles. You know, it's a small world. And yeah, he's just always been really kind. And at one point in an interview said that I was a great musician. It was like real quick. Oh yeah, Collette, great musician, and kept going. But for me, that meant the world.
That meant the world, right?
Right.
Everything.
Right away. Yeah, Lauryn Hill, you know, people always make the jokes and stuff, but she was very kind when I opened for her at Martha's Vineyard. And she stayed, not just to me, she stayed after that show, and she was not late.
Right.
And I know other people have had whatever experiences they had, but she was on time at Martha's Vineyard Music Festival. She stayed 2 hours after the show, signing autographs and just talking to people. And it was beautiful. So nothing but respect.
Good experience for you.
Is there a significance to the name in the company, or Media 2070, or?
Yeah, we launched it in 2020, and our idea is that the world we want to see by 2070, so 50 years from now, is one where reparations have already been paid to Black folks. And the media system helped get us there, because the media system is what keeps us locked into this idea, this myth that Black people are inherently criminal, are inferior in some way, all these other things, you know, all these stereotypes, these narratives. These are things that the media system serves up to us, whether it be journalism or the movie industry or what have you. So by 2070, we're not saying we're waiting until 2072. I get asked that a lot. But it's that we want all of that to be a distant memory by the time we get to 2070. And the whole media system, all of the narratives are just like abundant with a real picture of Black folks, the lives we actually live and who we really are, not some kind of threat to society.
Okay. What does media reparations look like for you?
We will know we have achieved media reparations when folks like y'all and me and so many of us that make media are doing so with more resources than we ever could have imagined. It's, you know, it's easy to do. The podcast episodes are flowing, the articles, the movies, whatever it is that we want to generate, whatever stories we want to tell. And we have complete ownership of our stories, from ideation through production to creation to distribution, because so many times somebody else is distributing our stories for us. And that, you know, we're just able to have ownership and control at every point of that process, and that we have more than enough money, equipment, and all of the material things that go into being able to do it. Because people, even though the dominant media system has done us a lot of harm, there's always been people making Black media to resist those narratives and those lies about us. But it's always been something that people do on a shoestring budget. You know, even our Black newspapers, they have a long, rich history, but they don't get the same type of funding from these grant making institutions that fund media. They don't get those types of grants. Those go to like your New York Times, your LA Times, your Washington Post. When the government, you know, is setting rules about who can own media, who can own a TV station and a newspaper, you know, they used to say that you could get a tax credit if you sold your station to a Black owner. Well, they got rid of that because then we started owning more media in the 90s. Right. And so the government made sure that it's really hard to do media. So we just want Black people to be able to do media, tell our stories with care, and with everything we need to do it, and still live happy, restful lives, get our allergy medicine, get insurance. You know what I mean? All those.
So who inspired you?
Ooh, well, my mom, who is an ancestor now, is my main inspiration. Because she owned a series of preschool centers, but she always built her schools in like housing project areas.
Okay.
Because she felt like everybody should have access to quality education. And that's how I feel about information and media. Everybody should have access to quality, accurate information. Who else inspires me would be Octavia Butler, Afrofuturism, and her books like Kindred, the Parable books, Parable of the Sower. You know, she was psychic, I think, because she predicted a lot of what's going on in the world right now. And I think being able to live in the future, which when you ask me what is 2070 about, that's basically what we're trying to do, is live in that future that's 50 years from now, 100 years from now. When you can do that, you can move in a way that really addresses a lot of problems now, thinking outside of the box, because you're living in another time. Right. So Octavia Butler and yeah, probably some other people, but that's who's coming to mind right now. And any kids, Black youth, I feel like constantly inspire me.
Now you talk about media as a whole. And so we kind of got to reflect on ourselves and say, we do have people that are in positions where, film, television, movies, even news outlets, because podcasting and YouTube and all that, Twitter and all has been like the new media, pretty much the more reliable media, if you ask some people. So, how much responsibility do we as the Black community got to put on ourselves about the content that we push out, especially when you're dealing with music and movies, any type of visual medium or audio medium? How do you feel the responsibility should be on our people before we can ask anybody for this?
Yeah. My husband, Brian Watson, shout out to my boo. He inspires me too. Has this saying, creative in the image of the creator. Mm-hmm. And to him, it's this idea that when you're creating, whether you're, media, different forms of media, news, information, you got to create consciously. You don't want to just create, if you, I don't know if people, listening believe in God and things like that. Whatever you believe in, though.
Yeah, we do. We definitely do. Yeah.
Definitely.
I can't speak for the listener, but we do.
Yeah. So that we're on the same page, I believe that God creates us with a purpose, with meaning. He doesn't just throw us down here like, just willy-nilly. And so similarly, when you have the power to create narratives, you got to realize that's huge power. And with it comes huge responsibility. And you want to create consciously. And honestly, social media and technology have been a double-edged sword, I feel, because they've made it very, very easy to get beyond the gatekeepers that used to keep us out of the media. But they've made it so easy that if you don't have that sense of responsibility, you can really get out here and do a lot of harm. Now, the Media 2070 project, the way we talk about it is that you have to have a sense of care. And that's been what's been missing in the media system, is that we've been a commodity. We've been made into a threat. We've been everything but able to just be full humans, full, citizens, residents, all these things. And so for us, the antidote to that history of harm and damage is care. So we put out a pledge to care for Black journalists and communities that we hope when people watch the film Black in the Newsroom and they see what Elizabeth went through and how dirty they did her, as you said it, that they will feel compelled. Wow, I give a damn about Black journalists, and want to either sign on if they have a media, platform or a newsroom, or we have a version of it where you can sign on and encourage the media organizations in your community, in your zip code, to sign on. And it's a pledge. It's an 8-point pledge that lays out how you show care for Black communities. So for us as Black media makers, if we're creating without consciousness, without care, just saying and doing anything, spreading disinformation, tapping into trending topics that we know are based on what's harmful to Black women, what's harmful to Black queer, trans people, things like that. That's not care. That's the opposite of care. Maybe you're doing it for some other motivation. But for Media 2070, we feel like part of the process of reparations has to be us participating in spiritual repair of our own communities as media makers.
As far as like urban entertainment, I mean, we all know that urban entertainment, there's a crazy market for urban entertainment. But as far as like Black news, I mean, do you believe that there's a market for Black news? I mean, the reason why I say that, because I've always heard that there were always like these polls and stuff saying like, that's the reason why they do, well, they have BET. The reason why they do BET supposedly is that they've done polls in the past and they're saying, well, Black people don't like this, and this is what they like, and this is the reason why a lot of people say BET turned out to be the way it is.
Yeah, so, it wasn't the original mission statement that we got today. It was supposed to be more Black documentaries, more, focus on Black news and things, and then Rump Shaker came out. Changed the whole game. Yeah, so that's where we at with it.
So Media 2070, when we talk about reparations and the reparative process, we feel like capitalism run amok has been a big part of the problem. And how it's not just capitalism, it's racial capitalism. Our ancestors, when I talk to people about reparations, I say to folks, you go to your job every day and then you get a check, let's say every 2 weeks for most people. Imagine going to your job every day. We're going to take away all the abuse and assault and stealing of identity and name and things that happened during the slave trade. But let's just say you went to your job every day. You worked all day, every day, but you never got a check for 40 or your entire life, 40 years, 50 years, 70 years, 80 years, something would be owed to you for that labor that was stolen. Mm-hmm. And so, similarly, when it comes to media, the idea that you're going to provide people news and information. I'm going to focus in on news and information and separate it from the other types of info,
right?
The types of media. The idea, first of all, that we, don't want news. You gotta say to yourself, what is the life that a lot of Black people are living a life where our generational wealth has been stolen. So we're working hard. We got a lot of competing priorities in our lives. We're disproportionately impacted by different health things, chronic disease, COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera. So I think what happens a lot of times is the same thing with voting. People say Black people don't vote. Well, first of all, why would we vote? Who has really been, serving our interests as far as these two parties that dominate? And then a lot of us just don't have time. Y'all don't give us the day off to vote. A lot of places required if you take a day off. It's like very nuts and bolts.
Right.
Black and white to me, why a lot of people maybe don't engage. So I think the combination of forces where you had a BET and, we operate in a capitalist system, a racial capitalist system where it's even harder for Black people to earn and support ourselves. So I feel like BET at a certain point was just like, we're going to do the thing that's going to get us the most money the fastest. And I honestly can't be fully mad at that. I would never put out harmful content, but I also have never tried to run a cable network. And then on the other end of that, as consumers, I think a lot of Black people, we just trying to, like Drake said, not a long time, but a good time, whatever. I can't remember. Right. And I just think we have limited choices too. BET shouldn't be the only game in town. There should be more Black cable networks. There should be a Black food network. There should be Black news network. There should be Black rump shaker network. There should be Black church network. We see that reflected in other cultures, but for us, we have just such a limited number of choices that we want to put the whole responsibility for everything we want to see and be on one media maker or one company, and it's just not realistic. But right. I think that when we take back our wealth that has been stolen and, be in our collective power, those are the conditions that could create that multiplicity I'm talking about, where it's not just all on Bob Johnson and BET.
Yeah, if we had a Black Rum Shaker network, they're not watching everything else, Collette. You might not want to throw that out there. Yeah. Just like,
It'd probably be a #1 corporation, man, right off the back.
I don't know who the president is, but I know what channel that's on.
They make a lot of money. They make a whole lot of money.
If Adam Sandler can make, how many stupid movies did he make in the 90s and early 2000s?
Yeah.
Waterboy, Happy Gilmore.
Mm-hmm.
Black people should be able to make whatever we want, even if it's not something I personally would like. I mean, I probably would watch the Rump Shaker Network, but I'm just saying.
Well, we got Tubi. I mean,
it's close.
About as close as you're going to get.
Close as you're going to get.
But
what? That does bring up an interesting point, because it seems like Black people as a whole is always held to a different standard in everything. To where we can't just be funny. We gotta make sure that we don't cross certain lines. You know what I mean? We can't just be, just tell a horror flick, because it can't be too gory. You know what I mean?
You gotta be conscious about everything, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I mean, it's because of the standard that we held in terms of we don't look too buffoonish when we're doing anything, or, just lowbrow or whatever, But getting back to the actual news, I wanted to quote something that you said in the essay here. Not you personally, but that what was said in the essay for the Media 27 project. It says, provide historical and contemporary examples of active role white media institutions have played in promoting and perpetuating anti-Black hate and violence on their platforms, which is something that you see now, which is very, very prevalent right now. Because most of the news that you see from different states and whatnot is violence in the streets. Violence is this person did that. We were discussing the other day, I guess with the Article 42, they were showing in Haiti. Again, I always mention the whole situation in Haiti, how they were trying to rush the gates once the article was put to rest and just, try to get out of there, because the gangs have took over Haiti. Which I saw that on a foreign news network. It's not reported here. Things like that are not shown here because as somebody said, I cannot remember who said it in one of the interviews I was watching in your research. We are never considered refugees. We're not looked at as refugees. We're looked at as these people just got issues, and let them just keep their issues and stay where they're at. Where meanwhile, Ukraine has refugees who are coming here to get nothing against Ukrainian people, but you come in here and you're getting houses and education. Yeah. They're getting the things that these people aren't going to get, at all.
And historically, people have come here, Irish people, all kinds of people, all cultures have come here and got some sort of reparation or something like that, in the history. And I mean, which has completely just built their culture here in America, you know what I mean? So
it just spits in the face of black people when you see other people come and get handouts and be able to make something out of their lives and
talk bad about us afterwards.
Yeah. But you see what I'm saying is that the media plays a big role in how we're portrayed, because it's basically don't give them anything. Right.
We get portrayed as undeserving.
Right.
And then the wildest part, which my colleague Joe Torres talks about this a lot, is that these politicians have weaponized those narratives.
Yes.
I don't know if y'all remember back in the 80s when Reagan came out with the welfare queen trope and different things like that. All of that is, of them portraying us as undeserving, right? But they've weaponized those narratives to the point that they are now hurting themselves, because it's primarily white people that receive welfare benefits in this country.
Yeah.
But they use the idea that black people get welfare to welfare. And now you have, children starving across this country. We have highest rate in history of childhood hunger. And it's because politicians that really want that money to just, either stay for corporations not to pay taxes, or to just devote all the money to military spending, or just different things like that, whatever they want. I really don't know what the Republicans want, but they definitely don't want to spend money on supporting people and to put our taxpayer money back into us. And they've used the threat that black people might get a little help to convince a whole bunch of poor white people to vote against their own interests. That's what's fascinating to me about it.
And what's crazy is most of the programs and all, be it the projects or welfare, wasn't really set up for black people. It was there way before, we got it. Even the term ghetto didn't come from us. It wasn't for us.
Right.
So, but if you let media portray it, it's like, this was all about you. Nobody.
And I want to correct myself, because I said Republicans, but a lot of Democrats are against the social safety net too. But anyway,
it's mumps and measles.
Yeah, two sides of the same coin.
It don't make a difference.
It don't make a difference.
But with this, like we're all talking right now, it seems like there's a vested interest to keep the media the way it is, to keep the news the way it is. I mean, do you see any kind of light in trying to break through this whole system? I guess that's why you're trying to do what you're doing. And is there a reason why you see some sort of light, or is just this hope that, we can turn things around?
I have this pessimistic optimism thing so basically, the news industry is falling apart. I'm sure folks saw the news this week. MTV News got shut down. Vice just declared bankruptcy. We see layoffs every other day. I mean, mass layoffs. BuzzFeed News is gone. Most of the communities across the country now do not have local newspapers anymore. They've been shut down or merged with regional newspapers. So you got whole sections of the country with no local journalists reporting on what these city council members are doing, or these state Congress members, or, state legislators, or different folks like that. That accountability isn't there. And so the erosion of the media system is the erosion of democracy, because reporters are supposed to be the ones that help shine a light on, how the folks in power are either doing well or are not doing right. So, with all these newsrooms shutting down and all these layoffs, that's the negative side of things, because that's real people, real lives that are being impacted, real loss of news and information ecosystems. But the pessimistic optimism for me is that I see that as a portal. So just like during the pandemic, they sent out the little stimulus checks. How much was that? Like $1,200, or depending on your household?
Depending on your household.
Yeah, I never thought I would see a day in my life where the U.S. government would send us all a check for anything. And yet, in the context of this horrific pandemic that caused us all, so much loss and grief, strained our healthcare system, continues to, we did see, oh, so y'all do have money.
Yeah.
Y'all have money for things. Like I said, social safety net, dare I say, reparations. They got the money. And so with the news industry, even as it's falling apart, I understand that it's going to transform. It's going to be rebuilt. Congress is writing legislation every day, trying to figure out how to save journalism. They had an act called the JCPA. And different states are doing things. New Jersey created a civic information consortium where they're giving out grants to media makers in the state of New Jersey. So there are people paying attention to this problem and trying to figure out how to address it. And that portal is when we have to strike as Black people and say, you can't rebuild it the way it was. That's why it fell apart. It was never serving us, and it was always serving lies. And that's where we show it with ideas like media reparations, like media care, like Black centeredness, different things to be able to demand something different, because it's going to be rebuilt. It's just a matter of what it's going to look like. And media reparations is a vision of what it will look like. So that's why I have hope, because honestly, it's falling apart. But I know it's that there's going to be a media system. It's going to resurge. But I just am working hard for us to have our say in that.
Well, I think it is. It's actually already here. But the only thing is that they can no longer get paid for it like they used to get paid for it. There was a product before. There was a newspaper. There's no longer a product anymore. So now it seems like everybody's on, doing some sort of news on the internet. So again, it's no longer you can get paid for it unless you got some sort of subscription service or something like that. And as far as like the stuff you were talking about, MTV and stuff like that, first of all, we got to understand that hip hop moves music now. You know what I mean? And urban media is probably the strongest media as of right now. You got the, different Drink Champs and all those different kind of podcasts and things popping up in the morning. And I no longer think like those companies like MTV and, stuff like that can compete with those kind of shows and stuff like that.
That's true. Yeah. They don't feel relevant as relevant as those shows. Yeah.
And I mean, even in terms of just actual news media, if we have more people doing, not to toot our own horn, but doing what we doing, or, speaking to people like you and bringing Elizabeth's story, out in the forefront where it should have been. And it would have shed more light if it was a major news outlet that touched it as well, that, we could probably get some things moving. Do you see Media 2070 maybe starting their own network at some point? I mean, I had the pleasure of sitting with you all during the whole town hall. There was a lot of journalists on that particular town hall that was sharing the same stories. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's wild how, most journalists can identify with what Elizabeth was talking about. Yeah, we do see ourselves kind of getting into that. For us, we are working. This will be the first time anybody has talked about this, I think, outside of our meetings. So y'all getting exclusive.
Exclusive. I ain't got no clue bombs or nothing, but we can go
ahead. But we are developing an approach we call speculative journalism. Mm-hmm. And it's this idea that we are investigating and writing about the future. So it's a combination of Afrofuturism and journalism. So for instance, I just developed a piece for New York Amsterdam News, which they are actually collaborating with us on their Juneteenth issue. And it's going to have a special insert created by not just Media 2070, but a lot of folks in our network. And my piece is about a future where we no longer have borders. And I know that's a radical idea, but go with me.
Yeah. Walk us down on this one. Collette. We might have a few people stopping their car right now. Yeah, go ahead.
I say for y'all, but just the idea that how you see a flock of birds in the sky, or you see some butterflies in a certain part of the year. Humans move around the earth. We always have. When you were in like elementary, middle school, you learned about Pangea and the people walked over the land bridge and these kinds of things. So what I'm talking about is immigration was not always seen as a crime. That is a new phenomenon of the last 40 years.
Right.
Coming into another country. Yeah, you maybe needed to check in or something like that, but it wasn't something that could get you put in a box, in a cage. And so just this idea that I feel the mass incarceration system is always looking for ways to have more bodies to do that slave labor. and they criminalized immigration to contribute to that. When in actuality, there's another way for us to be together on this earth, and climate change is going to force us to figure that out. Again, pessimistic optimism. That's kind of how I roll.
Right.
So I wrote from a perspective of a future where we figure out how to be together and be in relationship with this planet, take better care of each other as we take better care of it. And it's honestly Black people of the global South who are going to be first and most impacted by rising sea level and climate change. So that's why I wrote about that type of future, because I want something different for us. I want us to not be forced off of our lands and, forced to be in immigration detention and things like that because of climate change, something that, we as individuals can't control. So that's where that was coming from. But anyway, so there's a lot of realms you can think about that in. What would it be like if the internet was free for everyone, if everybody had home broadband? Right. You know what I mean? Just different kinds of futures and thinking about what it is we need. It may not all be, it's not about it being right or wrong. It's about us thinking outside the box of what's possible now. Because if we think about what's possible with the current Congress and the current two-party system and Ron DeSantis out here wilding and all these things, we'll never dream big. And when you think about the courage it took for our ancestors to be enslaved and yet know that they would not always be, and burn down plantations and be abolitionists like Frederick Douglass and things like that. That was them imagining a world that had never existed to their knowledge, but they knew it was possible. And that's why I feel like speculative journalism, which is, what we're working to develop, is a pathway for people who have that journalistic mind, to be thinking in terms of solutions, but in the context of a world that's completely different from the one we're in now, one where we're actually free.
So what if, I'm just playing a what if game here, that this thing actually came to fruition where we did have a media system that was just us, right? How bad do you think they'll be fighting to shut that down? This is when the internet is going to get regulated and, all type of stuff like that. Like,
you already know.
Yeah.
They're coming up with but you know what I feel? I'm from South Carolina originally. And so much of the national imagination of Black people is shaped by really ridiculous narratives in media, news narratives, entertainment narratives. When you think about like the movie Birth of a Nation, which is considered not the new one, I'm talking about the old,
not the Nate Parker,
right.
Not Nate Parker. I couldn't remember his name for a second, but the original Birth of a Nation from like 1909 or 1919, somewhere in that time frame. That's the kind of thing that you still see today. It's more subtle, but the hypersexualization of Black men, and Black women, tragic mulatto, like all these tropes, they still exist. And I feel like when we have that media system that you just described, that's just us, there'll be some things that are, not great, that are regressive, whatever, but there'll be so many more of us having our own say, portraying our lives. Like, what's it like to be an awkward Black dude? Or, different things like that. Somebody that is, what's it like to be a person that, well, anyway, just all these different types of experiences that you never see. And we kind of just get lumped into either, being a thug or, I already cursed. Can I curse though?
We don't encourage it, but you know what I'm saying?
We're all adults here.
So yeah, it's a family show.
Negative stereotype here. Yeah. I feel we have that media system, the whole way that everybody, including us, sees Blackness will be so much more expanded that all of this stuff we're used to they're going to try to tear it down, they're going to see it as a threat, will change because we'll finally have a sense of Black folks as full humans. That maybe I'm a dreamer, but that's what I feel.
No, it's good. It's good to dream.
Yeah, it is.
It's good to dream. It's good to dream because again, I think what happens is, as far as Black news is concerned, I mean, I'm not talking about urban entertainment. As far as Black news, I think it's eroded over the years. Like I remember coming up in New York, and we still had the Amsterdam News as kids and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And you had the stuff like the McQuarrie Report and Tony Brown's Journal and Gil Noble and Like It Is and stuff like that.
When Geraldo was an actual journalist.
Yeah,
what he is now. Yeah.
But I think we had those kind of things where those were kind of like community-based kind of like news programs and stuff like that. And I think it's good that somebody's coming up and trying to do something like that because we haven't, I mean, our news has just been, I guess, marginalized just to, urban entertainment.
Yeah. Or hyper-violence.
Yeah.
That too.
You think nothing good ever happens to Black people?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. So I can see that. I can see that taking off somewhere. Like,
it's good to have a dream on this one, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. Sometimes I feel a little, I don't feel optimistic about it, but it's good that somebody is dreaming, because who knows, you might change, you might break through that ceiling and change everything.
They just released their recommendations for reparations in Cali. They're talking about, up to 1.2 million per person. And, another exclusive, we we able to get a proposal for media reparations into their recommendation slate for the state of California, with appreciation to that, state task force. Shout out to Joe Torres again. He was able to work that out. So I think a lot is possible, and it's just a matter of us really, again, dreaming beyond how things look right now, because things change real fast. We learned that in 2020.
Well, again, I say I'm not optimistic, but on the same token, I have to look back at history and see how all people through history have broken through and done things that we thought were impossible. So, I mean, things are not as bad for you as it was for Frederick Douglass and all of those other people that came before us. So, I guess we have to have hope.
And I pose this question too, because you see what the vision is. You got the blueprint written out for it. There are our people that have money. Do they ever reach out to say, well, hey, we like what you're doing. What can we do to contribute? I can tell from that laugh that they don't, but they do. Right. They do. That's good.
They do. They sometimes, I want to say the names so bad because it's names that folks know, but I can't.
No, you don't have to, but it's just like, I would like to know, because a lot of these movements, she would like to, but she can't. Yeah.
She can't.
It feels like they are trying to figure out how a media reparations framework could help benefit their company, their one thing. It's like an individualistic thing.
Right.
For us, there's no reparations without a collective frame. It's got to be about all of us and how to change the conditions, not just what your company can get,
See, that's the kind of thing that scares me, because like you just said, like there might be some people that are willing to, put money into you, sponsor you and stuff like that, but they're scared to say, well, we are actually sponsoring this person, because again, that might affect their bottom line as far as money is concerned down the line and stuff like that. And historically, that's, something that always has happened with Black people.
And just to piggyback on what you said, because I was thinking the same exact thing that he said. I was actually going to say, what if their agenda don't fit yours, but they just got the money to fund yours?
That's always the challenge for movements. I mean, for us, we just believe, well, first of all, we don't take any corporate money. So that's number one. All our money comes from individual donors or like philanthropies, like your Ford Foundation, your Democracy Fund. Shout out to all of them. And things like that. For us, that helps us to stay like clean in a sense, in terms of just not getting kind of bogged down in the commercial aspects of it all.
Right.
Because there's a lot, the government, has a lot to invest. They already fund NPR, PBS, Sesame Street, things like that. That's all public investment in media. But we're looking for public investment specifically in Black media as a form of reparations for media harm. And so there's potentially going to be a lot of money in that, a lot of grants available for Black media makers and things like that. And we have to be careful that we don't get caught up in picking and choosing certain corporations or businesses over others, and making sure that it's grassroots and it's local, because we have, representation in terms of corporations, not enough, but like national platforms, but we need more local platforms and people who, care about their local community.
Yeah.
Do you think journalists now now that you guys are bringing some sort of light to this problem, do you think journalists now, Black journalists, are closer to getting compensated correctly, or no, it's still way off? Like,
it's still pretty off, but the progress we do see is more Black journalists banding together. And like a Black caucus at the LA Times, and they were successful in getting a Black executive editor over there, Kevin Merida, that used to be at ESPN. That's just in the last 3 years, they were able to do that. New York Times, different places like that. There was always like this unspoken rule in journalism to where you got to be super buttoned up. You can't be talking about what's happening in the newsroom, pushing back against things. Can't be banding together. You know how it is. We laugh about if they see all us at the water cooler, it's going to be a problem, but that's a real thing.
Right.
Will, shake that off and really get together and make demands. And I feel like that's going to be the key to folks getting paid properly, is those unions and those Black caucuses and people in the community saying to these news organizations, when they fire somebody for speaking out, or when it comes out that they've been underpaying people, that we're not going to tolerate it as your readers, that, or your viewers.
Okay.
So like I say, the situation that happened with Don Lemon and TJ Holmes would have been better if they actually had some type of representation.
Yeah, I mean, big time. What if they had joined forces? I know that that's kind of unheard of because media is so competitive, which goes back to the capitalistic, paradigm of it all. But when we get together, we're just so much more powerful. When you think about when the NBA stopped playing games, briefly during the in the bubble when Philando Castile was murdered. Right. That was kind of a world stop, because there's a lot of people that pay attention to sports and don't pay attention to anything else. Mm-hmm. And so just that kind of collective power and making moves as a unit inside these newsrooms, I think is something we've already started to see changing things, shifting things. We've seen people, toxic folks get fired, or we've seen policies change, pay get increased. And just the more collective power building we see, the more change we're going to see.
Right.
It's funny how we as Black people here in America have laid the blueprint to protest, but we don't eat off of it like we should have. It seems like when we do protest, it's like some of the most minute, and it's crazy, man. Like we'll protest to get Meek Mills out of jail or something like that, which I'm not saying that wasn't supposed to be the thing. I think he should be out of jail, for what he did, for whatever he was getting locked up for. But I mean, for something like this, like equal pay all across the board, if you want to jump down in the train tracks, I think that's what you should jump down in the train tracks for and stop the train for, and not, something simple as, these other things.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I think part of the problem is we have this culture. So we have this culture where we worship corporations. We worship Bill Gates. We used to worship Trump, and then, we figured out he's who he is. Mm. And on the face of it, it looks fine because it looks aspirational. And there's nothing wrong with aspiring to, wealth or achievement, however you define achievement. Mm-hmm. But the problem is when you worship Jeff Bezos, for instance, then it's very easy to not be moved when you hear the story of how his workers are underpaid and they have to pee in water bottles because they're not given a break, and how he has surveillance technology that he's selling to police departments that doesn't accurately identify Black faces. Mm-hmm. And a Black man, basically was confronted at his home by the equivalent of the SWAT team last year in New York because of a false facial recognition identification. All of that, and a lot of that is going back to Bezos. But if we're just worshiping millionaires and billionaires and the fact that they are that without being critical about how they got there, then of course, we think the CEO of Gannett or CNN and the idea of being an executive there and all those things, we find that to be so glamorous. We're not ever going to have the critical analysis to challenge the fact that they underpay Black journalists, that they report stories falsely. They call Black people, looters or things, but they call white folks who survive a disaster survivors. Right. We talked about earlier, us not being considered refugees, when in fact, many of us have relocated, or our grandparents did, because of lynchings in the South, and they relocated up north because of that. So we should get the same empathy. Just a lot of different framings that, get fed to us, but we don't criticize, we don't look at the media critically because we worship those corporations as like the height of success. If we can ever finally get past that, and not just in the realm of media, but corporations in general, I feel like then we could start jumping on the train tracks for some of these things that actually affect our everyday lives, like you said.
Right.
Okay. And our final thoughts, I wanted to ask you, what would you say to, the young Black, man or woman that's in school right now for journalism? With this whole, thing with the internet, a lot of people will say, well, why do I need to go to journalism school? I actually had an NBC journalist on way earlier in the show, and we had this discussion. I'm like, well, okay, can anybody be a journalist now? And he's like, well, no, you got to go to school or whatever the case is. But we have media such as this where we might have access to things that you don't, and access to places and people that you don't. And we can get probably better exclusives than you do. Not to challenge him or bash him for what he do, but I'm just asking a question. With that being said, can anybody pretty much do this?
Yes. And I know folks can't see me, so I told y'all not to put both hands to my
big yes.
I'm gonna tell you why I think that. When you talk about the concept of a griot in African cultures,
Right.
Our culture is one where it's always been based on storytelling. We love a good story. What y'all say in New York? Boom, check it.
Yeah. Collette, we said that back in like the 80s and 90s.
Oh,
really? Yeah.
Country girl, check it in.
But you can bring it back, though, I guess.
I'm gonna try.
All right, you can do that. Yeah, try that.
We tell stories, and we oftentimes, our stories have not been told by the dominant media that has all the money and resources that's been stolen from us. I brought up the Tulsa Massacre. A lot of people didn't know about that. Most of the population didn't know about that until The Watchmen came out on HBO.
Yeah, how about that?
Wow.
It's crazy. Right?
Yeah, the largest act of racial violence in American history. So if we didn't do what you all are doing, if we didn't tell stories and do acts of journalism, is what I call it, ACTS, acts. I can't really say it, but y'all know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Acts of journalism. If we didn't do those, so many Black stories would never be told. So many Black truths that we need to know would never happen. And I can understand the plight of somebody that works at an NBC or a big company like that and put a lot of time into a journalism degree and feels like, that journalism needs to be set apart in that way. But if we're ever going to realize justice, it just can't be. So I would tell a journalism student, ground yourself in why you're doing journalism. If you are doing journalism to tell the truth, which is what a lot of students say, I want to report the truth, I want to tell good stories, then you got to understand that the way journalism is taught and practiced now is designed to center whiteness and a white worldview. Most of what you see on that looks very, very benign and not a big deal, just regular reports, they are grounded in an idea that society has to prioritize white property and protect it from Black bodies, and that Black people have to be controlled and caged. That's the assumption. If you pay attention, that's the underlying assumption of most news and media. Mm-hmm. So for journalists, you got to ask yourself, am I willing, if I'm a student in journalism, am I willing to do this in a way that's completely different from what I'm probably being taught, unless I'm at like the New School or some radical university like that? Am I willing to do this in a completely different way from the way it's being taught, the way my boss wants me to do it? Am I willing to do it independently? Maybe not at some big company. And most importantly, am I willing to center Black folks? Tell the stories that my mama and them want to know. Tell the stories that working class Black people need, the information Black parents need. All day long, we're hearing these reports about these moms for liberty. We're not hearing anything about Black moms and dads and what they want at these school boards and from these school districts, what they want to be taught, from dominant media. And as a journalist, you got to ask yourself, am I willing to totally disrupt the way it's being done? Because if you don't, then you're complicit in injustice and media harm. And there's a lot of things I would say, but mainly it would be that. Are you willing to challenge yourself to show up completely differently and center Blackness? And that goes for any journalist of any color. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs to be a part of repairing the harm of anti-Blackness in our media.
Yeah. Right. And, telling these stories could be done. I mean, the Serial podcast has revolutionized podcasting based on one story that nobody knew anything about this kid, being on trial, getting convicted. They rallied around. I think the kid got out based upon that. Just that was only just word of mouth with the Serial podcast. So it can be done. It can be done. So before we let you go, Collette, can you let the people know where they can reach you, how they can contribute to this, what they can do to support the cause for the Media 27 and the reparations in Black media? Absolutely.
So Media 2070 or mediareparations.org, media2070.org, mediareparations.org. Either one of those will get you to our homepage where you can read our essay. It's a 100-page essay, so it's really more of a book, but it really lays out that whole history of media harm that I just kind of barely scratched the surface on in talking to you. And honestly, the essay, though it's 100 pages, only barely scratches the surface.
Yeah, because it actually itemized a lot in terms of the history of all of this stuff. So if you can read it, if you got to take it in small doses, take it as much as you can.
Yeah, it'll give you a sense of what's owed to us by this media system, these media corporations. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at media.2070. And we have an exhibit coming to New York for folks that may be in that area. We are activating a Black Future newsstand at the Schomburg Center on June 17th, the weekend of Juneteenth. On that Saturday, we'll be at the Schomburg Center Lit Fest all day, outside on the sidewalk with a newsstand full of magazines, newspapers, zines, art, all reflecting a future where reparations have been made real. So that is an opportunity to see us in person. But yeah, online, we're at Media 2070, Media 2070.
Also, and watch the documentary, y'all. You can give a
in the newsroom.com. Thank you.
Yeah, don't forget that. Don't forget that.
Blackinthennewsroom.com. Elizabeth Montgomery's story is so important. And when we decided to turn it into a film, it was also because she was courageous enough to just tell the truth about what was going on. So many Black people experience, BS at work, but we're not in a position to really be public about it. But she was courageous enough to do that. And a study came out around the same time that Gannett, which is the company that owned her newsroom, was in fact paying people of color on average $16,000 less than white men in their newsrooms. And they own hundreds of newspapers across the country, including USA Today and Arizona Republic, where Elizabeth was working. But she's no longer there. She's doing well. And you can see that film and the discussion guide, download it to discuss with your family or your class, if you're an educator or things like that, at blackinthenewsroom.com.
Okay. All right. So what I'll do is I'll put all the links in the description so people can, reach out, look at it. Do you talk to Elizabeth at all?
Oh yeah. All the time.
All right. Yeah.
She said for the first time in her life, she feels safe and at peace.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I said that a few weeks ago, and that really struck me. It made me happy and sad at the same time. I hope that, in the future that, we were talking about the dreaming and everything, that all of us feel safe, because that feels so basic. But at the same time, I feel her when she says she's feeling that just for the first time, because it's just not a reality for a lot of us, but it will be.
Yeah. And I don't want to keep ripping the Band-Aid off the cut, but anytime she wants to come on and discuss that.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, if you're listening, you have a platform.
I'm going to tell you, for her, she also has been trying to not stay stuck in that chapter of her life.
No. That's why I say we want to talk about the moving forward too. Yeah.
Say it again.
We want to talk about the moving forward too, because that's
boom. Elizabeth, you hear him, girl? They said just all right.
Yeah. A to B. We got to listen to, point A to B. Encourage the people out here. That's what it is. Encourage the people. All right. So with that said, Collette, thank you. Thank you for coming on once again. Remember, you always have a platform when you need it. And if you got anything else you want to promote, just go ahead and hit us up and come on and jump on, all right?
So when I finish my album, I can come back?
Come and talk. Come and talk.
Absolutely. We love to hear it.
Yeah, this was a pleasure.
Yeah. And I want to leave y'all with this little tidbit too. This came out today that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle almost got to a car accident, whatever. Paparazzi was chasing them. Sounds familiar? So just keep your ear to the ground.
That's hilarious.
I don't think they thought it was funny.
No, I'm laughing because my lady was showing me the royals, so it kind of it comes all together.
And you know what? The boy did talk about this. He didn't want things to look like his mom did, but try
to do the Diana on again, right?
Yeah. This was in New York too. This was in New York. So when you get a chance, check that story out. All right. With that being said, we're going to peace off here for tonight. And, we thank you once again for coming on, Ms. Watson.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Those as always. All right. The Only One Mic podcast is available on all major platforms that you stream your podcast on. Also, check out our Only One Mic Podcast YouTube channel to catch up on the past and current episodes. Please don't forget to rate the show and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to get in contact with the Only One Mic Podcast, you can reach us via Instagram and Twitter at the Only One Mic P1, Facebook and LinkedIn at the Only One Mic Podcast, and you can email us at email us at theonlyonemic00@gmail.com. Reading this stuff can kind of choke you up, folks. We thank you once again for your time, people. And we encourage you to please speak your truth quietly and clearly and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant, because they too have their story to tell. So until next time, please keep in mind, we never had to run from the Ku Klux Klan, so we shouldn't have to run from a black man. Peace.
Peace out.
Peace.